In today's episode, a village in Indonesia with a growing snake attack problem is struck with their latest fatality. A woman tending to her garden was squeezed to death and swallowed whole by a huge 15-foot reticulated python. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying snake attack on Wa Tiba. Welcome to Final Affliction. In June 2018, a stealthy predator was on the prowl in Indonesia. 54-year-old Wa Tiba lived on Muna Island just off Sulawesi's south coast. The small island is beautiful and isolated. It covers an area of just over 650 square miles. It's surrounded by turquoise blue waters and a fringe of golden sandy beaches. Dotted about the island are freshwater lagoons hidden by dense jungle and waterfalls emerging from the greenery. Most of the locals on the island make a living from agriculture. They grow rice, sago palms, and tubers. Some fish in the sea, often catching the much sought-after and highly profitable sea cucumbers, as well as the plentiful fish. Communities on the island are close-knit. Everyone knows everyone else. Wa Tiba grew vegetables to feed her family and to sell at the local market. She had been having problems recently with wild boars. They had been coming out at night and feasting on the produce grown in the nearby gardens. They were destroying Wa Tiba's hard work, food, and supplementary income. One night, she decided she had had enough. She wanted to stop the wild boars from eating all her vegetables and needed to scare them away. The rainy season had recently ended. The surrounding countryside was lush and green. The air was hot and humid as Watiba stepped out of her house that evening. The temperature was a pleasant 20 degrees Celsius, a significant drop from the low 30s in the daytime sun. She grabbed a flashlight and machete from her house and slipped her feet into her sandals. The garden was about half a mile away from her village. All was quiet in the night except for the chatter of a few people as they made their way home for the day. Watiba walked out of the village and down the track towards the garden. Either side of her was thick undergrowth and rocky outcrops. The path meandered through the trees. Soon the trees gave way to a rocky area. The garden lay at the base of a large cliff, which also had caves in the rock face. It was a known spot for snakes. When she arrived there, she spotted the wild boar. They were snuffling around on the freshly planted vegetable patch, rooting in the earth and munching their way through the feast. They were making a mess and destroying Watiba's hard work. Watiba shouted at them and clapped her hands loudly. They squealed and scarpered, running away into the forest. She walked up to her vegetable patch to see what damage they had done. She shone her flashlight up and down the garden. She was going to have to come up with a new way of deterring them. That evening, Wa Tiba wasn't the only one looking for the wild boar. In the undergrowth, a predator had picked up the wild boar's scent and was making its way to the garden. When the pigs ran away, the predator turned its attention to Wa Tiba. As she bent over to inspect her vegetables, the ambush predator struck. It was an enormous reticulated python, 23 feet or 7 meters long. It lunged at Watiba. Its mouth opened wide as it bit her on her back. It knocked her forwards, and she felt the pain from the bite. She jumped up and looked around. The machete flew from her hand and fell on the ground. In an instant, the python had her in its grip. It coiled its body around Watiba. She could feel its constriction, its immense muscles squeezing her body. She couldn't move. Her arms were locked down by her side. Her legs were wrapped in the snake's powerful embrace. Watiba tried to struggle. She tried to fight it, but the more she wriggled, the tighter it became. She struggled to breathe. Her blood vessels were squashed and squeezed. Her rib cage could expand no more. Through its rapid attack, the snake had secured its victim. In a matter of minutes, Watiba lost consciousness. She could no longer breathe, and the life had been squeezed out of her. Tragically, Watiba died on her own that night. She was a much-loved member of the family and the local community. She was a devoted mother of 2 and would be sorely missed. For her, the attack must have been truly terrifying. It must have been an incredibly painful way to go, a feeling of helplessness and powerlessness without the ability to fight back. She had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The snake had been hunting her that night. It was likely attracted to the area because of the wild boar. The forests of Sulawesi have been in sharp decline recently due to deforestation for logging and to make way for agriculture. This leaves the native wildlife with nowhere to go. Predators like the python are more likely to come across people. They must cross open farmland to travel from one section of forest to the next. Their fragmented habitat is making hunting their usual prey more and more difficult. As agriculture expands across Sulawesi, pythons are attracted by other animals that live near people and their farmland. Rodents and livestock are easy prey for these snakes. So too, it seems, are humans. When Watiba struggled no more, the snake was able to consume her. In a chilling moment, the snake moved toward Watiba's head. It opened its mouth wide. The stretchy ligaments in its jaws enabled it to eat prey much larger than itself. Then, it engulfed Watiba. It inched its mouth over Watiba's head and down along her body. Slowly, she was swallowed down into the snake's belly. Her feet lay near its mouth, her head toward its tail. When her family noticed that she hadn't returned home the following morning, they alerted the village. Immediately, people began searching for her. More than 100 people joined in the search. They retraced her footsteps and made their way to the garden. They could see that Watiba had been there. On the ground were her flashlight and sandals, but Watiba was nowhere to be seen. She had vanished. Just then there was a cry from one of the villagers. Little more than 50 meters away, there was a huge 14-foot reticulated python. It was having difficulty moving as it was incredibly bloated. The search party suspected the worst. They immediately killed the snake by severing its head, and several of them lifted it up and carried it back to the village. When they arrived, they lay it on the floor. The crowd gathered around. Some had mobile phones and were recording the scene as another took out a sharp knife. He ran the knife down the length of the snake's body, slitting it open in one go. To their shock and horror, the villagers could see a body inside the bulging snake. As they peeled the snake's body apart, they could see that it was Wa Tiba inside. She was completely intact. She was still wearing all her clothes. Some of the onlookers screamed. Others cried. It was a traumatic discovery for those who knew her. The community was shaken. They feared leaving their homes alone or going out at night. With agricultural land spreading further and further into the surrounding jungle, reports like this are becoming more common. The snakes can grow to massive lengths, and although humans aren't their natural prey, they are opportunistic ambush predators. Watiba was given a proper burial later that very same day. This was in keeping with their religious beliefs. It was quickly organized amongst her family and friends. Her 2 children had to say goodbye to their mother. When she had left her family home the evening before, no one could have predicted that would be her final farewell. It seems, although rare, attacks from pythons are becoming more common in Indonesia. Only the year before, a 25-year-old was attacked, killed, and eaten by a reticulated python on mainland Sulawesi. He had been working in one of the many palm oil plantations. Also, a year before, another man was attacked whilst working in the palm oil plantation on Sumatra. This particular person survived the attack, but the 7.8-meter snake had caused him serious injuries. As their habitat is destroyed and human settlements expand, interactions between humans and large snakes are going to happen more often. These are unlikely to be the last we hear about such tragic and terrifying deaths. With the sharp rise of snake attacks, locals are beginning to live in fear of meeting their untimely final affliction.